I'm a retired plastic surgeon, but my undergraduate degree and my interest throughout my practice is with microbiology. So this new coronavirus that's around is really interesting to me. And I thought maybe I would explain what we know about it now because we're learning more and more things as time goes along. But before I start talking about the virus, I want to just catch you up on your high school biology. So a cell has three parts to it that I want to explain to you because they're important. There's the nucleus where the 23andMe's hang out, the DNA, and that is the director for everything that cell does. And then there's a little tiny piece of cell matrix. It's called a mitochondria, and that's the mechanics of the cell. That makes everything. It's the production unit. And then there's this outside covering of the cell, and in that cell membrane is a place called an ACE receptor. It's just a place on the membrane where things go in and out of the cell. Then in your immune system, there's lots of cells that work, but the ones that we need to talk about are the B cells and the T cells. They're both lymphocytes. The B cell makes antibodies, and the antibodies that we're interested in are the IgG and the IgM. And there's then the T cell, which is a killer cell. And it goes around looking for things to eat up, things that are foreign, and particularly things that are covered with antibodies. Now, a word about the virus. It's called a coronavirus because it has this outside shell, which is a mucopolysaccharide, but it has all these little points sticking out of it. So when you look at it, it looks like a crown because it has all these little things sticking out like pieces of metal, okay? On the inside of that round ball is a piece of RNA, and the RNA is the key here. The RNA is the exact mirror image of DNA. Remember, we talked about the nucleus containing that DNA, which determines what that cell is going to make, okay? The RNA is the messenger. It's the little memo that the DNA sends out to the mitochondria to start making something, to do something that cell is supposed to do. So this virus is RNA, and when it is injected into the cell, then it takes over the manufacturing plant, and it makes three things. It remakes itself, so it makes more RNA. It causes the mitochondria to churn out this RNA, a replicate of itself, and it makes that little round ball of mucopolysaccharide that the RNA is put into, and then it makes all these little spikes. So that's what the virus does, and once that new virus inside the cell is made, then it's spit out and it's gone into the bloodstream, and that's how it replicates itself. So now we know that this virus it lives in your nose and the back of your throat, and you inhale it, or you touch your hands on some surface and put them to your nose and mouth, and it gets in through your nose. And it just kind of hangs out in the back of your throat and in your nose until you sniff. And when you sniff, then that virus, remember all the little spiky points and the mucopolysaccharide and the RNA that's on the inside gets down into your lungs. And on the end of those little spiky points is a key. And that key then attaches itself to the cell wall where that ACE receptor is, and it injects the virus. And that RNA then takes over the mechanics of the cell and starts making new viruses. So it hangs out in your nose and the back of your throat. It just stays there until it's either sucked into your lungs and gets in your bloodstream, or it gets up through your nose into your brain. More about that in a minute. So now we want to fight against that. Your body, once the virus is out there, your B cells recognize the little spiky proteins, and they start making IgM and IgG. You can think of them as little gooey globs, and they attack onto that virus, and then your T cells come around, recognize the antibodies, and they eat that, whatever that thing is, and it's the virus, they eat that up. But sometimes the virus replicates itself so fast that your immune system just can't keep up, and you're overwhelmed with the virus, and you get this thing called a cytochrome or cytokine storm, and you essentially drown. So we want to help your body defend itself against this virus. So what the scientists have done, and it's really just remarkable science, what the science has done is take that RNA that the virus has, and they split off the part, just the tiny part of it that makes those little spiky proteins. So the rest of it you throw away, and the only part of that RNA that was the virus now can only make the spike protein. So we inject that spike protein into your body, that's the vaccine, and that spike protein then gets into your cells, and that, the RNA that makes the spike protein gets into your cells, and the only thing it can make is the spike protein. So it spits out all the spike protein, not the virus. It can infect you. But the B cells then plaster that spike protein with antibodies. So, and your killer T cells come and start eating that up. So they're looking, the antibodies are floating around, and they're looking for that spike protein. Now you inhale the virus, the real thing, and it gets through that ACE receptor, and it starts making itself, and it spits out virus into your bloodstream, but now there's a whole bunch of antibodies waiting for it. And it gets killed before it even has a chance to infect other places in your body. It is remarkably effective. And the fact that we were able to make it in such a short time is kudos to the scientists who are already working on this. There are other coronaviruses. There are SARS and MERS viruses that are very similar to COVID-19, and we already knew how to separate their little tiny spike protein RNA. So it was just a simple matter of figuring out where on this RNA chain the spike protein is made, take CRISPR and dissect it so that we just have that little tiny RNA now. So the vaccine is a remarkable feat of science. We have to use it. The faster we get everyone vaccinated, the less likely it is that the coronavirus will change, and the little spike protein that it makes will change, and the vaccine won't work. So we have to get on it. Everyone who has an opportunity to get vaccinated should do it immediately. In the meantime, you need to protect yourself. You need to protect your nose and the back of your throat. So don't put your hands up to your face unless you've just washed them. Wear your mask all the time. The little aerosolized particles of virus are out there in the wind, and it's possible that you could pick them up. In fact, once you're vaccinated, the concern is that the virus still sticks in your nose, and although you won't get infected, you won't get sick, you might sicken somebody else because the virus is in your nose, and when you cough or sneeze or laugh or talk, that virus will come out of your nose.